I'm Dwight Jones, the chairman of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus, representing 5 senators and 11 delegates from across the Commonwealth. And we're here today to applaud the dreamers. We're here today to applaud the contributors. And we're here to applaud the courageous men and women and children that will be commemorated here on the state capitol grounds for years and years to come. I wonder if there's anybody here today who agrees with me that this is a great day. And I believe that it's a great day for some more than others. And let me just get on the inside of some of our psyches, because when I was elected in 1993 to the House of Delegates and came in 1994, I have to admit that I didn't get the warm and fuzzies when I came on the Capitol grounds. There was a spirit that gripped me that was exclusive rather than inclusive. But today, I want you to know history is being made and the tide has changed, because now the thousands of young people that come from schools all over the Commonwealth of Virginia will not get half of the story or part of the story, but they'll get the whole story. They will be taught that Virginia is not just for a select few, but Virginia is for all Virginians, regardless of the color of your skin, regardless of the communities you came from, whether you are from the right side or the wrong side of the tracks. This is our state, this is our Commonwealth, and this statue helps us acknowledge that. I was asked by a reporter, does this change anything? And as often happens to me, I did not have the right words at that time. But I have the right words now, because it does change something. It changes something for those of us who are here today. And I want to take the liberty to change the words of the great poet and say that the lives of great men and women and children all remind us that we too must make our lives sublime. And everyone who is here today and the families we represent must place our footprints in the sands of time. And let me say this for the faith community. I know it's on your spirits, because when Carlton Blunt sang Amazing Grace, I heard your response. I want you to know that we have come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord, trusting in His holy word. He has never failed us yet.
I am Nikki Giovanni. This is not a poem. This is hot chocolate at the beginning of spring, topped with hand-whipped double cream. A splash of brandy to give it sass, and just a little cinnamon to give it class. This is not a poem. This is a summer quilt, log cabin pattern. See the corner piece? That was grandmother's wedding dress. That was grandpapa's favorite Sunday tie. That white strip there is the baby who died. Mama had pneumonia, so that red flannel shows the healing. This does not hang from museum walls, nor will it sell for thousands. This is here to keep me warm. This is not a sonnet, though it will sing, Precious Lord, take my hand. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Go down, Moses, way down to the past, way up to the future. It will swell with the voice of Marian Anderson, lilt on the areas of Leontine, dance on the trillings of battle, do the dirty, dirty with Bessie, moan with Dinah Washington. Rock and roll through the 60s, rap its way into the 90s, and go on out into space with Etta James saying, at last, no. This is not a sonnet, but the truth of the beauty that the only authentic voice of planet Earth comes from the black soil, tilled and mined by the daughters of the diaspora. This is a rocking chair, rock me gently in the bosom of Abraham. This is a bus seat, no, I'm not going to move today. This is a porch where they sat spitting at fireflies, telling young Alex the story of the African. This is a pot with leftover vegetables, making a slow cooking soup. This is pork simmering chitlins, surprising everyone with our ability to make a way out of no way. This is not rest when we are weary, nor comfort when we are sad. This is laughter when we are in pain. It is Nemind when we are confused. It is keep climbing, child, when the road takes an unfair turn. It is don't let nobody turn you round when our way is dark. It is the faith of our mothers who plaited our hair, put Vaseline on our faces, polished our rundown shoes, patched our dresses, wore sweaters so that we could wear coats, who welcomed us and our children when we were left alone to rear them, who said, get your education and nobody can put you back. This is not a poem. This is a celebration of the road we have traveled. It is a prayer for the roads yet to come. This is an explosion, the original Big Bang that makes the world a hopeful, loving place. This is the black woman in all our trouble and glory, in all our past history and future forbearance, in all that ever made love a possibility. This is about us. Bleached and natural, braided and straightened hair, made up or beaten up faces, short, tall, stately bent, CC riders, junkies, whores, wives, mothers, grandmothers, aunts, working in the home or the outside, working in the system or outside, working, praying, working to survive, giving pride, giving succor, giving voice, giving encouragement, giving whatever we can give. This is a flag that we placed over Peter, Salem, and Peter Poor, the 54th Regiment from Massachusetts, all the men and women lynched in the name of rape, Emmett Till, Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr. This is a banner we fly for respect, dignity, the assumption of integrity for a future generation to rally around. This is about us, celebrating ourselves, and a well-deserved honor it is. Light the candles. This is a racket. Let's ride.
Nikki, Giovanni. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa Collis, and I am so very honored to be here on such a memorable and happy day. There is perhaps no greater human quality than courage. Courage isn't simply a virtue unto itself. It is the core, the essence of every virtue, every venture, every truly lived moment. We celebrate courage in literature, art, and film. We revere it in our war heroes, sports heroes, and superheroes. It's what we teach our children when we let go of their hands and proudly watch them venture into the world on their own. And it's why we are here today. A few years back, when my family and I lived behind these gates, I had a post-dinner routine. I would take our dogs, and generally our youngest daughter, Eliza, on walks or rollerblade rides around Capitol Square. She was 7 at the time and loved to show off her new reading skills by running up to all the monuments and reading the plaques aloud. One night, in the midst of this practice, she asked me to explain why these men were picked to be here. I told her it was because at some point in the past, it was decided that these individuals had done something important or heroic for Virginia or our nation. She seemed to accept that and walked on, only to turn around a little later to ask, well then, how come Rosa Parks isn't here? The part of me that feels I always need to have an answer quickly replied, well, yes, Rosa Parks definitely did something very important, but she was from Alabama, and this is Virginia. Yet even as I explained it away, I thought, she's right. A vital part of Virginia's history, this nation's history, the struggle for equal justice, for full civil rights for African Americans, the civil rights movement and its heroes were nowhere to be found in Capitol Square. And know-it-all mom that I am or not, I realized I really couldn't explain why to my child. And so I worked to rectify that. This monument was inspired by children. My own asking that question, the thousands who visit the Capitol every year on school trips, who we know deserve Virginia's complete story and all Virginia's heroes, and most importantly, Barbara Johns, a 16-year-old African-American who in 1951, in the Jim Crow South, courageously risked the wrath of her society and led her fellow students in protest. 45 years ago, from his jail cell in Birmingham, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. foretold this day when he wrote, "One day, the South will recognize its real heroes, who rose with a sense of dignity and brought this country back to the great wells of democracy dug deep by the Founding Fathers." I'm not sure Barbara Johns ever saw herself as a hero, but she stood up, and beside her stood her fellow students, their parents, NAACP lawyers Oliver Hill and Spotswood Robinson, and the Reverend L. Francis Griffin. And let us not forget the countless others who in countless other protests across the Commonwealth also stood up for this cause. The courage of these Virginians changed our Commonwealth and changed America. May this monument stand testament to all of us, all ages, all races, all ethnicities, to the power of their courage. And as Barbara Johns so beautifully put it, it seemed like reaching for the moon, but she reached nonetheless. Thank you.
I am Julian Bond, and I am particularly pleased to be here, not least because I'm chairman of the board of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and the NAACP's history is intertwined with what happened in Virginia more than 5 decades ago and what calls us here today. I'm also pleased to be here because I teach at the University of Virginia about the freedom movement of the 20th century. The events and the people we celebrate here, the Brown v. Board of Education decision, and the Virginians who helped make it possible are an important part of the history I teach. Finally, although this celebration is about history made a half-century ago, it is really about a much older, deeper, and sadder history, the history of chattel slavery. I'm the grandson of a slave. My grandfather was born in Kentucky in 1863, and because of this, freedom didn't come for him until the 13th Amendment was ratified in 1865. He and his mother were property, like a horse or a chair. As a young girl, she'd been given away as a wedding present to a new bride, and when that bride became pregnant, her husband, that's my great-grandmother's master and owner, exercised his right to take his wife-slave as his mistress. That union produced 2 children, one of them my grandfather. He grew up to become an educator, and he would honor, as do we, those Virginians whose actions led to Brown versus the Board of Education, the Supreme Court decision that ended legalized school segregation. Barbara Johns was only 16 years old on April 23, 1951, when she led the entire 450-member student body on a walkout to protest the deplorable conditions at Robert Russa Moton High School, their segregated school in Prince Edward County. The young Barbara Johns came by her activism naturally. Her uncle, Vernon Johns, was Martin Luther King's predecessor at Montgomery's Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. The author, Taylor Branch, writes of Barbara, of all the Johns clan, she was regarded as the one with a fiery temperament, most like her uncles. And make no mistake, the events in Prince Edward County were made possible in spite of the adults and because of the students. Following the walkout, as Branch tells us, before the Negro adults had decided what to do, and before most of the white people noticed the controversy at all, Barbara Johns and her little band sent out appeals to NAACP lawyers, who, completely misreading the source of the initiative, agreed to come to Farmville for a meeting, provided it was not with the children. A few days into the strike, an almost surreal tide swept throughout the entire Negro community, overwhelming the solid conservative leadership that had always held sway. A young preacher delivered a thunderous ovation at a mass meeting. Anyone who would not back these children when they stepped out on a limb is not a man, he declared, and the assembly voted to proceed with an attack on segregation itself. Barbara's sister, Joan Johns Cobb, remembers, "My sister decided to call Spotswood Robinson and Oliver Hill in Richmond to see if they could help. Spotswood Robinson and Oliver Hill were lawyers. They were busy. They didn't have time to come to Farmville to see what was going on. However, Mr. Hill would tell me later that he got a call from Barbara, and she was very persistent. She told him that we needed him, and he just had to come. He said she said to him, 'You just have to come.' And she just kept calling until he decided to take the case." The NAACP filed suit 1 month after the walkout. 3 years later, after being consolidated with 4 similar suits, the case would be decided as part of Brown versus the Board of Education. Rather than abide by the Brown decision in integrated schools, in 1959, Prince Edward County shut them down, choosing ignorance over education. They remained closed for 5 years, giving the county the dastardly distinction of being the only school district in the United States to close public schools for such a long time to avoid desegregation. In 1959, Shirley Davidson was 6 years old, the only African-American child on her Farmville block. In preparation for school, her mother made sure she had all her shots and new school clothes. Every day she watched the school bus from the new tax-supported all-white private school roll down her street, pick up every white child, and pass her by. No bus came for Shirley. That was when she began her makeup school, her make-believe school. She would gather her books together in the morning and go outside on the sidewalk. The school bus would pass her by. Every afternoon when the school bus returned, she'd be on the sidewalk, pretending. I hope, friends, as you contemplate this memorial, you'll think of Shirley Davidson and of the tens of thousands of others who experienced the tragedy and the triumph that is the history of Prince Edward County and the history of our national struggle to come to grips with the unresolved problem of race. And I hope you will not pretend that this struggle has nothing to do with you. When the Supreme Court outlawed segregation in 1954, a vast army of nonviolent protesters, including students, rose up to challenge segregation's morality as well. From the first, it was a people's movement, made up of ordinary women and men. The cumulative acts of their passive resistance became our modern democracy's finest hour. By 1965, Jim Crow was legally dead. A voteless people had voted with their bodies and their feet and paved the way for other social protests. The anti-war movement of the 1960s drew its earliest soldiers from the Southern Freedom Army. The reborn movement for women's rights took many of its cues and much of its momentum from the Southern movement for civil rights. Most of those who made the movement were not famous. They were faceless. They were not notable. They were nameless. Marchers with tired feet, protesters beaten back by billy clubs and fire hoses, unknown women and men who risked jobs and homes and life. As we honored those Virginians who risked all in pursuit of educational rights, let's remember what they and other civil rights protesters achieved for you. They helped you learn how to be free. They gave you the freedom to enter the larger world, protected from its worst abuses. If you are black or female, their struggles prevent your race or gender from being the arbitrary handicap today it was then. If you belong to an ethnic minority or you're disabled, your ethnicity or your disability cannot now be used to discriminate you as it was then. If you are Catholic or Muslim or Jewish, your faith cannot be an impediment to your success. And as you grow older, because of what they did then, you'll be able to work as long as you are able. My grandfather speaks to us now. He said in 1892, "The pessimist from his corner looks out on the world of wickedness and sin, and blinded by all that is good and hopeful in the condition and the progress of the human race, bewails the present state of affairs and predicts woeful things for the future. In every cloud he beholds a destructive storm. In every flash of lightning an omen of evil. In every shadow that falls across his path, a lurking foe. He forgets that the clouds also bring life and hope, that the lightning purifies the atmosphere, that shadow and darkness prepare for sunshine and growth, and that hardships and adversity nerve the race as the individual for greater efforts and grander victories. Greater efforts, grander victories, that was the promise the generation born in slavery made a century and a half ago. That was the promise made by the generation that won the Great World War for democracy 6 decades ago. That was the promise by those who brought democracy to America's darkest corners 4 decades ago. And that is the promise we must all seek to honor as we leave these ceremonies today. Thank you.
We are honored to have with us today the sculptor of the memorial, Mr. Stanley Blyfield of Connecticut and Italy. Mr. Blyfield.
Thanks. I just want to give you a word about the meaning of this monument to me and a little about the process that brought it about. The idea for it did not spring from my head fully realized, like a lightning bolt from Zeus, as our classical history tells us. I did not want to make a statue. I wanted to make a living memorial. Living memorial to me is one in which people that see it engage with it. They want to know why it's there, who are the people, what are they doing, what's behind it. If they think that way, for me, it's successful. I shared my frustration with trying to get this idea with a friend who almost immediately remarked to me, he says, how can you memorialize something that already happened more than 50 years ago and make it in a monument? He said, the achievement of civil rights is a continuing struggle and will continue to be so. That simple idea lighted my way. It broke the ice and cleared my mind. I thought, young people of all kinds and types, striding forward together, confident in their future, into a society that they will help to create. It's their energy that infuses this work, and that's my message. I want to thank publicly friends and colleagues who have collaborated with me on this. Bert Silverman graphically represented in watercolor the concept. Giancarlo Buratti, who's here from Italy with his family, who provided the technical and physical foundation which permitted me to model the figure's life size. Sergei Elembekov is a sculptor educated in Russia. Sergei contributed his exceptional talent and even more his inspiring energy in collaborating with me on the modeling of this work. I also thank Nick Benson. He is one of the most talented carvers of letters in stone that we have in this country. And especially, I want to thank Dick Polish. I want to acknowledge him. His foundry cast this work in bronze with the highest standards of craftsmanship. Because of his expertise, genius, and persistence under the almost insurmountable and unexpected of circumstances, was a successful installation of this monument possible. And I thank before everyone my beautiful wife, Nikki, whose advice, encouragement, and perceptive criticism provided me with so much of the energy necessary to complete this work. In all sincerity, participating in this Civil Rights Memorial has been one of the greatest privileges of a long career as a sculptor. For this, I thank the Commission, and especially some of them for their hands-on support. Judy Anderson, Joe Seipel, Lisa Collis, Dick Zorn, Elaine Jones, and Lou Kadiri especially. I thank you very much. I end by leaving you with this thought, which for me is the essence of the monument. The struggle for civil rights will go on. It will be carried forward by educated young people today, tomorrow, and in the future. Thank you. Ours
is not the Virginia of 1951. The year 1951 marked the beginning of Virginia's quest for civil rights in education. It also marked the year of my birth. As a small child, I remember well the Sunday visits to our grandparents' home in Buckingham County, not far from Farmville. In my childhood, I knew little of how the Moton strikers would affect my life. Looking back now, I know that I too stand on their shoulders. As a graduate of the College of William and Mary, their shoulders were broad enough to hold me. As a former member of the Virginia General Assembly, the same body that deprived Virginia students access to education during the years 1959 to 1964, for some period of time not only in Prince Edward County, but also in Norfolk and in Front Royal, Virginia, their shoulders were broad enough to hold me. As a legislator who offered the resolution of regret, their shoulders were broad enough to hold me. As the delegate to sponsor legislation to offer scholarships to those denied the privilege of learning and the right of learning, their shoulders were broad enough to hold me. Now, as Secretary of Administration, I know my life is one that has been made richer by what happened in Prince Edward County 57 years ago. Our task today is to learn from the past and to utilize the history lessons in a manner that profoundly impacts tomorrow, and to teach our children that they too can be effective agents of change. It is now my honor and distinct privilege to acknowledge some of the special guests today that have not been previously acknowledged by Ms. Anderson. We have, of course, acknowledged beforehand Congressman Bobby C. Scott. I wish to also acknowledge Major General James E. Chambers, Commander Fort Lee, Chief Kim Adams, Chief of the Upper Mattaponi Indian Tribe, Chief Stephen Atkins, Chief of the Chickahominy Tribe, and sending her regrets, Chief Ann Richardson of the Rappahannock Tribe. The former governors of Virginia have been recognized, but I also would like to include a note that former Governor Chuck S. Robb sends his regrets. Members of the Virginia Civil Rights Memorial Foundation and members who are present today, who are the memorial co-chairs, have already been recognized. Members of the Civil Rights Memorial Commission have been recognized, but there are two others: the Honorable Jennifer McClellan, Delegate, House of Delegates, and Dr. Woody Holton, Professor of History, University of Virginia. And also Rita Mosley, Prince Edward High School employee and Brown versus Board of Education scholarship recipients. I would also like to inform you that there are about 70 members of the Barbara Johns family here today, about 26 members of the L. Francis Griffin family here, about 8 members of the Spotswood Robinson here, and 8 members of the Oliver Hill Senior family. In addition, I would like to acknowledge from the Governor's Office, Chief of Staff Wayne Turnage, the Honorable Robert S. Bloxam, Secretary of Agriculture and Forestry, the Honorable Catherine Henley, Secretary of the Commonwealth, the Honorable Thomas Morris, Secretary of Education, the Honorable Marilyn Tabner, Secretary of Health and Human Resources, the Honorable John W. Marshall, Secretary of Public Safety and the son of former Justice Thurgood Marshall, Honorable Anish Chafer, Secretary of Technology, the Honorable Pierce Homer, Secretary of Transportation, the Honorable Robert Crouch, Assistant to the Governor for Commonwealth Preparedness, the Honorable Danny LeBlanc, Senior Advisor to the Governor for Workforce Preparedness.